Vernon Griffith, welcome to the Pace Performance Podcast. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Rob, man. Pleasure to meet.
Pleasure to meet you too. Finally, heard a lot about you from various different people. David Joyce been one, and I'm happy to get you on, mate.
Hopefully all bad things. Hopefully bad
Of
stories.
course. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, I know you hate talking about yourself, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Would you mind giving a bit of background, a bit of a bio on you? Might be short, but needs to be done.
Oh man. Yeah. Obviously I do not like this part, Rob. I do not. So I guess short. Uh, I'm a curious guy. I love exploring new things. I love music. I love art. I'm a dad of two kids. Husband to a beautiful wife, 17 years. So outside of that, man, coaching is just coaching. It's just a job. It just fills the void. But that's who I am.
We're gonna have to dive into that last comment definitely at some point during this episode. But how did you get into it? How did you get into coaching? I know it's just a job, but how did you get into it?
So I don't have this great lineage of coaches, man. I grew up scared of the weight room. I
Yeah,
vividly remember avoiding the weight room, faking injuries, and now people that I went to high school with and college, it's like they're like, "What? What do you do? What? Wait, I was the dude that had my foot in a bucket of ice because I faked an ankle injury because I was so intimidated of the weight room. Joined the military, started learning a little bit, got really intrigued with it. Started going to college for it. Ended up getting out of the military, finished up college, and opening a gym. And that was, I guess, that's my route, man. I kind of stumbled upon it. It was a good point in my life where I think I needed something to focus on, and it helped me a lot. It allowed me to help others, so it kind of gave me a path, at the right time.
there are plenty of people out there listening. Well, hopefully, plenty of people out there listening. But one thing that will resonate: everyone's got, whether you're in a pro setting, collegiate setting, high school, sub elite, amateur, they've all got a you back when you were feigning injury to avoid the weight room. They've all got that kind of they've all got that guy or girl, haven't they?
Yeah.
Who just doesn't want to be there. So when you get a you when you were younger, how do you make the environment that you coach in as conducive to that, the opposite of that as possible?
I had a good mentor of mine, Ben Hilgert, very young, or years ago. They reached out, great guy, football coach here, and he said I was working with a high school football team, and I couldn't get them to buy into what we were doing, or they didn't care. And I'll never forget when he said, "They're not supposed to. They're football players. They're not weightlifters. You have to convince them that what they're doing will help them, and then let them have fun doing it." And he was like, outside of that, like, what are you trying to influence? And that kind of shaped. I was like, man, that is exactly what I needed. I needed a coach that wasn't trying to make me a weightlifter, that just was like, hey man, weightlifting's kind of cool. Try this. And then that one exercise becomes two, becomes three. Now I'm working out 4 or 5 days a week. That's what I needed. So that's what I think that now my direction is. It's like, be the coach that you needed, be the coach that 16-year-old, that lost 16-year-old needed. So that's kind of where I lay my emphasis.
And the military gave you something like that to coax you into getting in, or was that just necessity with the environment that you were in?
Military helped me out a lot. I grew up a
Okay.
lot. I was forced into some leadership roles very early on. Deployments, you learn quite a bit about yourself when you got some pretty extenuating circumstances going on. And it was just, I think it was just a culmination of everything. Where I was at, being in charge of troops, understanding that physicality plays a huge role in stress and arousal and being able to make the right decisions. So it kind of just, I don't know. For what, I don't believe in coincidences. Everything happens for a reason, and for whatever reason, at that moment in time, things just came to fruition the way they did.
So apart from the few, I suppose, tips that you've just given from the mentor that you just spoke about, how would you or could you communicate any tips that you would give to younger coaches to help the you at 16, the Vernon of 16, to enjoy the weight room and not be intimidated? And how would you explain to that young coach to create the environment that 16-year-old actually wants to be and wants to feel like they can thrive in?
I mean, without getting too cutesy, it's well, what a 16-year-old, especially most of the kids, like they're not going pro. Most of them, if they make it in college, fantastic. But what is the weight room? It instills confidence. It lets them learn who they are. Like that's to me, that's where I've shifted my thought. It's the weight room is a great place where kids that are not exceptionally sport driven, like sports skill, they're not the best, most talented baseball or soccer or football player on the team, can excel in the weight room. So it almost gives them a voice to be a leader amongst their peers within a group that they wouldn't be a leader because they're not the best player on the team. So it's almost like, what is the point of the weight room? To instill confidence, obviously to get stronger. But if you're confident, getting stronger, becoming more powerful, having more intent behind movements, all that stuff comes with it. But to me it's confidence, especially as teenagers, young female athletes. I mean, that it's confidence.
When you look at your social media, particularly your Instagram, one thing that comes across to me is just the exploration been a big part of what you communicate in terms of the post that you put out, whether it be the description or the videos. How big a part is that for you? Does exploration, movement exploration, come across not only in what you do, but how you coach and how you encourage others to use the weight room?
I mean, the exploring thing was a joke. It was all a joke with my guys. And honestly, the word exploring should the better word that I should use is collaboration, because most of the stuff that I share on social media with me doing it, it's what I did on the floor with my guys. And it's like, hey, do you feel this? Where do you feel this? Oh, that's a great movement. And then it becomes, oh, that's so cool. It's a mobility. Man, I don't care what the word is. I don't care what the exercise. I don't care what we call it. But it's collaboration with my guys on the floor in the moment. And then I go online and record a video and share it later. But it's collaboration between the client and myself. And honestly, it came at I needed it. I was at a point. I was running a program with military special operators, and none of them have one injury. For one injury, there's a textbook answer. There's, oh, you have an ACL issue, rehab, rotator cuff, blah, blah, blah. There's a step process that we can do. But when you have two injuries, now there's no more rules. Now there is no rules. Where do I start? Did one start the other? Are they completely separate? Whatever it is. So now this exploring of movements is just about, hey, what can your body do? So now instead of looking at that small isolated spot, let's look at a global movement and see how things are affected, because we do know that an issue, a pinpoint part of the body can cause a cascading ripple effect out somewhere else. A problem in your hip can cause a problem in your shoulder, a problem in your hip, problem in your knee. All that stuff is associated. So when I look at movements and we explore movements, that's where most of that thought is coming from. It's what can my guys do, instead of saying, what can they not do? Instead of looking what they're contraindicated of what they can't do, which is completely normal to have that thought. It's, hey, what can we do? How can we explore around this? What can we get out of movements? And not to get on a rant, but I had a guy one time, ex-EOD guy, Marine, and he had both of his arms blown off and half of his face. And I'll never forget, he was one of the first, it's definitely amputees that I worked with. And he said he wanted to deadlift. And I remember I looked at him and I chuckled. And I was like, what? You want to deadlift? Because I was in the mind frame of why? Why would you do that? Why would you want to do that? Why do you need to do that? In the sports world, you'd be like, well, that's so stupid. That's so risky. Why would I do that? And then I never put myself behind his eyeballs. Why not? Like, why not? Like, why would he not want to do something that he was used to be had the capability of doing? And that's where that exploration came from. Multiple injuries. Why not? Why can't guys do things? And it's back to confidence, instilling confidence in movement that they may have been taken from them. Like, I can't do that movement anymore because I'm hurt, or I can't do this anymore because I'm injured, or I can't do bicep curls because I don't have a forearm. We hooked bands and cables up to his nub, and we did bicep curls because that's what the dude wanted to do. And that's where I think most of those thoughts came from.
Just to dive into that a little bit more, when you're dealing with someone, not only with one injury, but two injuries and potentially catastrophic injuries, what's what's your thought process to determine what they can and can't do? What's the first place that you would start to try to identify not only, well, again, what they, not what they can't do, but what they can do?
Ask questions.
Yep.
Ask them where they feel. I think one of the biggest mistakes coaches say is they tell someone where they should feel something before they allow that athlete or tactical professional, I guess, in my line of work, to tell them where they feel something. Oh, you're supposed to feel this in their hamstring. Well, he doesn't have anything below his knee. He lost above his knee, complete amputated, so his hamstring is tied in a different spot than yours is. So he's going to feel things in different spaces. So now it's asking better questions. Hey man, try this. It's I saw a great reference one time, and it was an optometrist that had those, though I don't even know what the machine is called, but it's like you adjust it and be like, how does this feel? Do something different. How does this feel? How does this feel? How does this feel? And to me, that's where that comes from. It's what can you do? What feels comfortable? What are you comfortable doing? And then how can we make it more efficient possibly? And how can we add output to it?
Do you think working with them, that kind of population who have them type of catastrophic injuries, helps you with the able-bodied, if that's the right term to use? Do you think it helps you with that because it reframes how you think about things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you got when you have guys that are doing with and I'm not exaggerating, that have double bilateral amputations on their legs, and we're doing box jumps off their nubs onto crash pads because they want to be able to do box jumps because their best friends are in the CrossFit games. Like it totally reframes how you look at things, because it's truly, like we just talked about, I guess 5-10 minutes ago, is what matters. What is really the only thing that matters? And it's getting that person back to a place where they feel confident in their movement, where they're happy, where they can live as much of a successful life as they can, if they that they can live, knowing that that ceiling kind of got brought down on them a little bit with their current state.
Would how you think about things change if you were, let's go.
Easy.
Would how you think about things change if you were in a collegiate setting or a pro setting, of how you create that environment? Less about, well, it's more about winning, more about Saturday getting a result. Would that change how you frame things?
It may have. To be honest, I would never get on my high horse and act like that doesn't matter, because job security and you having a family and you being worried about ends meet, that all comes into play. And it's very easy for me to say, oh, that doesn't matter, and person first and this and that, because I get it. Results matter, especially in sports where you have to win, and that's the only thing that matters. I've seen that side. I work with professional athletes as well, and it's just, I think me being exposed to that such early on in my coaching career biased my thoughts to movement and how we train things, versus if I saw it the other way first, maybe I wouldn't be having this thought process. We're a culmination of our experiences, and my experiences have been very productive, I guess, to where I'm at today.
Hmm. I'd like to get into the family stuff, but we'll leave that for a little bit longer. But again, just looking at your social media, maybe something that you're well known for, and this came up in the book with David Joyce and Dan, High Performance Training for Sports. Probably something that you've become known for is the mobility, flexibility side of things. Again, probably rightly or wrongly from what you guys, also you share from a collaboration point of view, as you've said, online. How have you, and I'm pre-answering the question based on what we've just spoken about for the last 15 minutes, but how have you become known for that? And has that been purposeful? Has that been something that has kind of just happened?
I mean, it's my foot in the door. Like people say, well, I don't want to be known for something. Being known for something gets your foot in the door. If
Mm,
I'm the mobility guy, I don't care. Whatever. Sure. Call me the mobility guy. Call me the stretching guy. Call me, as my daughter's softball team, the guy that rolls around on the ground with no shoes on. I don't care. because if that starts the conversation, I can take the conversation where I want to. And that's, to me, for whatever reason, mobility kind of took off. People look to me from it, and I like to share that information. I think movement, it's kind of a cliche thing to say movement is medicine, but one of my good friends, Mike Hill, he says that his athletes take their daily vitamin, their daily movement vitamin, like just move daily, and how these small movements can lead to such big things, big outcomes. And as a coach, it's like, oh, I got to get them working out. I got to get them lifting. I got to get them squatting, benching. I got to have, you could just start with a walk around the block. You could just start with some moving around on the ground. And now those 5 minute bites, that 10-minute bites becomes a 30-minute bite, becomes a whole session, becomes 3 sessions a week. And now you're influencing life rather than just trying to prove your point that strength and conditioning is the only way when there are many only ways. So I, mobility is just, it's fun. I like it. I enjoy it. I feel like I can speak to it a little bit different based on the people that I've worked with and my experiences. So it's fun. It's giving me opportunities, but it's a foot in the door. That's, to me, if that's all it ever is, then that's awesome.
If you're working with general pop, do you work with general population?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Not as much as I used to when I was in college, but still
Yeah.
some.
If you said mobility and flexibility to them, they probably wouldn't be able to differentiate between the two. They'd probably bundle into one. And probably what pops into their mind is static stretching, my guess would be. How do you differentiate the two if you're communicating that with someone that's not a peer?
So I look at flexibility as it's just the capable range of motion, and that's dependent upon not only the health of the joint, but also the health of the tissues surrounding it. And then from there, just your psychological standpoint of how you feel around movement. You know, if you have some heightened feeling that picking something off the floor is going to give you back pain, then you're going to have less range of motion when you bend down to pick something up just because you're guarding that. So flexibility to me is, I think the textbook definition is a joint ability to move through a range of motion. And then I add on, that's because of the health of the joint, the health of the surrounding tissues and their capabilities. And then there's a coordination rhythm standpoint to doing activities. But then to me, the mobility is that fun word because it's not an exercise word at all. We totally took this word and threw yoga mats on it, and we were like, mobility. Like, mobility is the ability to move between social classes. Mobility is the ability for an allied army to outflank another on the battlefield. And then the exercise world was like, oh my God, ability translates to the ability to move in Latin. Perfect. Let's make it exercise. Let's exercise this thing. Let's exercise it. And it's, to me, that's where this word that I'm trying to influence thought for, I guess, if that's what I'm doing, it's the ability to move, be moved, or adapt. And that adaptation that takes place is not only from a perceived stimulus, but an unperceived, like jumping up for a rebound, coming down, landing halfway on someone's foot, or running down first base and stepping halfway on first base on the bag. Those reactionary moments. And to me, that's what mobility is: the ability for the body to organize towards events to have the best possible outcome.
Just linking that point with what we were talking about before of the exploration and the phrase that you used. How important is it for you to get the guys and girls that you work with, into positions that then would be deemed potentially unsafe, like valgus, for instance? So avoid it at all costs. Well, hold on a second. These guys are going to experience this on the court or on the field, so let's actually put them in these positions in a controlled, as we're talking about with the kids, controlled, contained environment where we can see what's going on, so they can actually experience that. So when they're on the court or the field, they've actually been there before, rather than it being avoid at all costs. Is that something that you would live by yourself, or do you have another kind of theory, philosophy on that?
No, I mean, absolutely. I definitely think you need to meet them on their grounds, and watching their practice, watching their film, having them send you film, that allows you to create, in my mind, a vernacular of movement. So I can tell one of my football players, hey, I want you to get internal rotation of your hip, and I want you to push off your toe. And or I can ask him, hey, on this pass rush, what are you looking for? And he starts using words like, hey, I got to get on the inside edge. I have to load my hip. I have to turn my shoulders. I have to create torque around my pelvic, my hips. And I'm like, perfect. Let's use those words now when it comes to training. So now when we're doing these exercises in the weight room, I'm using his words like, hey, get on the inside of the edge. Remember that pass rush? Remember that position you were having issues with? Now let's think about that here. And it's not sports specific, but to me, it's sport relevant. And that's a good way for you to build trust in the weight room where I'm not going to add a band setup to a guy coming around an edge and hold him or hook bands up to an end of a bat and that crazy stuff. I'm not doing that at all. But if I can take something that he did in practice or a game or she and create some relevance of why mobility is important or strength training is important, that's low hanging fruit. Like why would I not do that? Why would I not create that that stable base, that vernacular of training of, hey, these are why these movements are important, and use their words to influence them subconsciously of, man, I should do this exercise. I do need to improve my hip mobility. I do need to get into these positions because last volleyball match, I found myself in this deep position trying to dig this ball out. Now it makes sense. Now I understand. Rather than just trying to shove them in this box of, hey, we need to squat today. It's like, hey, watch this video. Doesn't this look the same? I think it helps create trust, and creates that collaborative moment of them like, wow, he's doing this just for me. This is actually a training session for me and my teammates. It's not just bodybuilding.com's 8-week program. And if you're sponsored by bodybuilding.com, I apologize.
Definitely not. Just taking my last comment to the extreme, like something like knees should never go over your toes when squatting pattern. Then you've got someone like knees over toes guy who's taking that, obviously flipping that and doing the complete opposite. So again, would that be something that you would encourage for people to get in those class unsafe positions whether it be for rehab or just to put them in positions because they're going to experience that in the real world?
So when it comes to experience, like, so if we're talking injuries, there are obviously a lot of things that go into injury outside of the mechanical component of tissue. So when it comes to, and I obviously I don't want to talk bad about anyone or what they're doing, but for me, rule number one is do no harm. So obviously it's like, man, all these people online can do these crazy splits and they can go put their knees way past their toe and go on the ground. That's great. That's awesome. I can't do that. I can't go into a split. I can't do that. And it's just like trying to teach, so it's empowering, obviously, your athletes as well, that all range of motion is not equal. More range of motion, more range of accountability. And as well, it's just being smart about it, man. Rule number one is do no harm. So if someone can do that, awesome, great. Can the majority of people do it? No. And to say that's the right answer, that's the right end goal, I don't know if that's the right answer as well. So I don't know. I don't do the extremes. I like the middle. The middle's comfortable. One of my friends, George Carvalho, said, I'd rather be a mile short than an inch too far when it comes to my programming, and that's something I live by that pretty seriously.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because living in, I mean, you're probably a anomaly when it comes to this with your social media success, but living in the middle and not being the extreme on one end or the other is not pretty normally conducive to not getting attention, which is why people gravitate towards the edges to get a little bit controversial to get attention. So living in the middle is probably becoming more and more unpopular because that's not what gets potentially not what gets as many likes, retweets, comments, and creates that controversy around what people share online.
I think there's a difference between creating controversy and sharing things just to get like that notoriety versus what I feel and I hope that other people feel when I share something, it's to get people thinking. It's to influence thought. When someone asks me, "Hey, why'd you share that?" or "Hey, can I use that?" Absolutely, but use it towards your population. Make it better. Make it specific to what you're doing. Like I'm not trying. At no point do I ever share something and be like, "This is it. I'm going viral here, baby. This is gonna blow up." Like at no point am I thinking that. Honestly, half the time my wife goes, "It's like, why do people even take advice from you? You're not even in shape." And I'm like, "I know. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's just because I'm just a regular dude that's just sharing
Yeah.
what he's doing." And so I don't have advice for what people should do, because there are people that share those edges, like you said, and they blow up and they become famous. And I don't know. The people that I work with, I'm fortunate enough that most of the time when I post something, the guys that I work with in the military, they'll DM me and be like, "Cute shorts, bro. Nice legs. You selling feet pics." Like that's the stuff I get. I don't get any sort of positivity reinforced. It's all negative. So I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah, I must admit the feedback that I would give you is yours comes across very genuine. Yours comes across in the middle ground, which is where you say you want to be, but does make and the comments do make people think. So if that's what you want to be, I think yeah, you're nailing it. You're nailing it.
Well, that's cool.
Let's go on the family stuff.
Okay.
So one of the first comments you made, coaching is just a job. It's basically all about everything else.
Yeah.
Has this always been the case, or has this been a recent or not recent reframing of how you view who you are and how people perceive Vernon Griffith?
Man. So definitely here we go. Here we go, Rob. I guess
Here we go.
to me, I've had some pretty big aha moments in my life. Once again, I don't believe in coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. And one of the first ones when it came to family was I went to a retirement ceremony when I was in the military. And if you've ever been to a retirement ceremony in the military, it's a very cool experience. A lot of very cool stories, war stories, emotional stories, and they always connect the family at the end. And my mentor at the time was one of the best leaders I've ever met. From all the experiences we had while deployed, while just all the things that he instilled in me, and how much he helped me. I couldn't be more thankful for him, and I looked up to him tremendously. And I'll never forget when he was on the stage and there people were crying, like the stories were just tremendous. And when it was time for him to talk about his family, he had nothing to say because he was never home, because we weren't. And it was 18 years that were just gone. And or I guess 20, but his kids were like in their 16, 17, they were older. And he had the most generic things to say about his family. And I just remember going, "Oh my God." Like I was sitting there like, what is going on? I'm still getting goosebumps now that I can think about it. And when you give your kids like a present, he gave his wife flowers, he gave his daughter flowers, and he gave his son some sort of something. I think it was like a video game thing or something. This kid was into gaming or something. And they go up on stage and then they talk about their dad. And it was like, "Oh, he's the best dad. He's so great. He's good dad." And I was just like, I looked at my wife and I gave her this look, and I'll never forget her eyes, because after we left that retirement ceremony, I was like, "Holy shit, he doesn't know his kids at all. He knows me better than he knows his kids." And in that moment, I was like, "I got to get out." Like my daughter was, I think, 5 or 6 at the time, and I got out of the military. And then I
That
got
was
it.
you done?
That was, or I had like a year left, but I was
Okay.
I was bordering staying in, and I was like, no. And I was like, "I'm gonna go full into this coaching. I'm gonna get my degree, and I'm gonna start my degree, and I'm getting out." And I got out, and then I got into coaching, opening a business, and I found myself doing the same thing. Just you put in coaching is seasonal. I I'm fortunate because I'm in the private setting that I can prioritize my time with my family, but I understand my friends that are in professional sports that it is very seasonal. There are times during the year where you're not going to be home. So you have to be at work. You have 12, 14-hour days. I understand, but then when you are home, you need to be present. And the best example I can give is you can only put your family on the back burner for so long before that water just boils out and there's nothing left anymore. And I found myself falling into that same boat. So it was paid assistant for me. The place that I owned, it wasn't for me. I was spending too much time worrying about work and not about my family, and that was a huge moment between the military and that coaching point where it just totally changed my philosophy on where I was dedicating my time and who I was. And not to get tangenty again, Jesus Christ, I hate, but I had someone ask me who I was. That was a big part. And it was like, who is Vernon? If someone was to say, who is Rob, what would you say? Who's Rob Pacey?
Oh, jeez. Um, well, Dad, I suppose, is the first thing because that's
Yep.
15 weeks ago. That'll be the number on there. Husband, that'd probably be 2, and then I'd have to mention the podcast. Is that sad? I don't know. Like that's what I do.
So I said the same thing. I said, man,
Yeah.
I'm a father of 2. I'm a husband. I'm a coach. And he was like, no, that's not who you are at all. You became a dad. You became a husband. Your coaching is a job. Your podcast is a job. Like, that's not who you are at all. Like, that's who you've become. Who are you? And that sort of thought, that sort of question, it carries so much weight because you're like, man, like, who am I? Like, at 16, I used to look up to this person that I was about to become. And now I'm that person and I don't know who I am. Like, it is, it to me, that it kind of messed with my head and messed with my mind and made me like rethink where my focus was. And that prioritization of now where I spend my time, who's worth my time, and my family being more valuable for time and investing time instead of just spending it have been monumental for me.
Well, firstly, we'll have to book a therapy session after this, Vernon. I think we
Yeah,
need after.
yeah.
That's for me, not you. But firstly, thank you for given what you've just said. Thank you for giving up an hour of your time because I've seen your daughter walk past the window there behind you. So I appreciate you giving up your time and spending an hour with me. With all that being said, but what did you answer to that question of who is Vernon and how has that changed now?
I would say, I guess I think it's how I opened up. Like, who am I? I am a curious human being that loves exploring. I love being outside. I love music. I love art. Um, I love I love doing nothing. I think that goes against the coaching world, but I love just being, which I don't think many people have the ability to be. And I used to be one of those people, but I can just sit on the porch and just relax. I don't have to do anything. And I think being at that peace with myself, that's who I am. I'm just, a curious person that loves exploring, loves trying new things. I love food. I love music. Um, that's who I am first.
I think, and please tell me your thoughts on this as well. I think we're at a little bit of a turning point in the strength and conditioning world where people, and by people I mean coaches who are in positions in elite sport, collegiate sport, are starting to think ask themselves some of the questions that you've just asked me and have asked yourself in the past. And hopefully, and I'm talking about the UK here, we'll be expecting more from their employers to respect that they are more than just what happens at the club or the organisation. Do you think that's the case over there, or do you think I'm way off?
Man, I would love to say things are getting better, but then you see
Okay.
a job posting where you have a master's degree and $17,000 a year. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where that line is. The people and my friends that I've had, they are prioritizing this and are asking better questions. But if you don't value yourself, how can you expect anyone else to value you? If you don't value your own time, if Jesus, where are these flies, man? If if you don't value your own time, how can you expect anyone else to value it for you? And that, it's almost like, what is your time worth? Well, if you think your time's worth $5 an hour, why is someone going to pay you more than that? So I think it's truly reflecting on what you know your worth know what that is and know what you're willing to take. I guess another story I had was when I first started coaching and I opened up my business, I was trying to get into the local setting, as most people in a private setting do. And one of my colleagues, I guess, is a high school coach here. He was like, "Hey, I'm running a pro camp for some young players that are coming in, and I had a couple NFL guys coming in." He was like, "Can you come lead the warm up and talk about the importance of strength and conditioning and training?" And I was like, "Dude, I would love to. What weekend is that?" And he was like, "I was like, it's such a great opportunity." He was like, "Hey, it's going to be 2 weekends from now." And I was like, "Whoa, my daughter has a softball tournament that weekend." And I was like, "But it's local, so I may be able to like, bounce or maybe miss something or whatnot." And he was like, "Well, how much would it cost? How much is your time worth?" And that was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And I was like, "Dude, I don't know. Like, no, like most coaches, like how do I charge for my time? Like, I don't know how much my time's worth, whatever it is." And I've seen coaches say, "Well, you're not paying for my time, you're paying for my experience." Whatever. I don't even know what that means. But the way he put it, I'll never forget it. He said, "Vernon, I'm not paying for you to be here from 11 to 12. I'm paying you to not be with your family from 11 to 12." And I sat there and I was like, huh.
Rate's just gone up.
Well, well, that moment I was like, huh. I kind of sat back because we were sitting down, and I was like, "I don't think I'm going to be here Sunday, man." And he was like, "Great choice." And that was one of those moments that literally has carried me. It's like, man, there are opportunities where you do have to take that money, where you do have to stay late, where you do have to work for free, I guess, but understanding at the cost of what, and making sure you're not sacrificing the main thing to get this thing on the side.
I recently did a survey. I've done quite a few of these surveys, predominantly here in the UK with different populations, whether it be people that work in senior football over here in the various different leagues, in the academy football, in rugby, etc., etc. I did an academy football survey. I think you'll be interested in this. 136 people responded, all in strength and conditioning positions or sports science positions in the top four leagues, Premier League, and then the three below that. 136 people responded. One of the questions on there was, how many hours a week do you work? Obviously, we had the full spectrum.
Yeah.
We had the few at 37, which was obviously the contracted. Maybe they thought I was going to pass that to their employer, because I'm not sure many people do that. then you had 40, 50, 60. We had some people doing 80 hours, and I put regular. What's your regular week? Someone's putting between 70 and 80. Now, another question that was asked was, how old are you? Simple question. And I've just remembered here, I looked at the data today, 2 out of 136 people were over the age of 40. Then you look at the first stat that I just gave you, and you're like, obviously,
Yeah.
people have a family, and priorities change and duck out, and like, I've had enough of this. This is not doable anymore. So the industry is killing itself because it's demanding so much of these people that you're constantly getting this turnover of young professionals. Then someone gets to a certain point, has kids, has a family, reevaluates, and then you're getting a young professional in again. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of fit in with the conversation, and was probably cool to share some of the stats from that, because it does play into this merry-go-round of what we see in our industry.
I think the interesting thing about all of that is, I gave the metaphor last week. I was talking to one of my friends. He came for lunch, and we were talking about being valued. And he was like, "Well, coaches don't get paid as much because they're not valued." And I was like, "Incorrect. Coaches are very valued. It's all, but I give the metaphor of, it's almost like you're seeking the approval and the affection of a father that will never love you." And it sounds really bad. It sounds really bad, but that's what it is. It's like, "Oh, I want to be valued by this team." They're never going to value you, because there's a line of people that can do what you're going to do for way cheaper. But there are people that do value the tactical population. All these military guys that I've worked with, video game, e-gaming, strength and conditioning is exploding. They value you so much, but you don't value that opportunity. So it's not just you being valued, it's you chasing being valued from someone that's not going to. So I think the fault lies on both sides.
Just written a little note there for myself. I'd put something like this kind of conversation on Twitter the other week, and a guy that I know who's been a technical coach in soccer over here for a number of years. I think he's probably 50-ish years old, so he's been around for a while. Got the best coaching qualification, technical coaching qualification here in the UK in football. And he responded saying it's exactly the same in coaching, i.e. technical coaching. You've got a UEFA A licensed coach, which is the best qualification that you can get. And they're getting minimum wage because everyone's caught up. There's this saturation at the top of highly qualified people, which means that they can pay what they want, which is nothing, or minimum wage, what they legally should be doing. So we think, and we always talk about it because it's our industry and this is who our friends are, this is what we work in, and strength and conditioning, our sports performance coaches. But it's actually the same in technical coaches. It's probably the same in all these other things that are linked to sport, and just because I'm using that as an example because that's what we're in. So we can't think, oh, this is just us, everyone hates us. No, this is just replication of what's happening elsewhere, and they're all in the little bubbles and little silos going, I think it's only us. And It's not only them. It's everyone. It's everyone because everyone wants to be in, so it lowers the bar.
Yeah.
In terms of salaries.
I agree.
Yeah. So in terms of one thing I picked up on the start of this kind of second part of the chat was being present. How do you, and this is something that I struggle with, and the listeners will no doubt be thinking, yeah, I'm the same. How do you ensure that when you are not working, you are present with your kids, with your wife, and with your lovely 2 dogs?
I don't have an answer, Rob. I'm be quite honest, man. That's something I struggle with, and I just prioritizing my time and just being anxious about moments and emotions and stuff. I talk to a therapist, and one of the biggest things he gave me was centering myself. So you'll see me if I have something in my pocket, I have this like key ring that I'll like have in my pocket, or I'll just tap my fingers, and it helps center me to the moment because that's what being present is. It's actually actively listening. Like my wife tells me all the time, did you hear what I said? Yeah, I heard what you said. I wasn't listening at all. I was just listening for 2 or 3 words that because I knew you were going to ask me, are you listening? I was just had those 3 words in my pocket. So when she goes, you didn't even hear anything I said. I said, yeah, you said something about the cardboard box and being out in the driveway. And she was like, well, yeah, you picked out cardboard box and driveway. That doesn't mean you were listening. And it to me, it's one of those things. It's being present in the moment is something that I've worked on a lot. But I think you don't, I guess my epiphany with that is I realized that my moments were leaving. Like it's almost like I realized these moments were slipping away because of my kids. Like watching my daughter now, she's turned 16 next year, and it's like, holy shit. Like these moments that I haven't been present for are fleeting, and they're just going so fast. So that's kind of been, it's almost like my kids have forced me to be present because I want to be present in their lives. So I guess that's where my thought is, and also centering myself in the moment, which I got from my therapist.
Do you think seeing a therapist is a lot more more normalized than it used to be?
It is one of the best things that anyone can do. Even if you think you don't need to, you're like, oh, I don't need to. You need to. You need to. You need to. Because it's, even if it's just one conversation, even if it's just opening up to someone that's not judging you, that's just listening. I think it's so important. And I did it early on in my military career when I was having some issues, and I stopped because they were trying to push me with medications, and I wasn't going to do that. And now, being a little bit older, a little bit more mature, when I approach the therapist I have now, I said, "Hey, man, I'm not sure how this works with clinical psychology." And I was like, "But I am not taking anything. I just want someone that's going to listen to me and be an unbiased opinion and tell me what I need to hear when I don't want to hear it." And he's been great for it. And I just think more people, yeah, I know it's kind of like a cliche thing, and some people run away from it, like, "Oh no, mental health, blah blah blah," or whatever it is. I don't know what the term is: mental health, mental curiosity, mental agility, social whatever. I don't know, but I know having someone that I can talk to and it's scheduled every week, and I can look forward to that time almost like I look forward to going on a date with my wife. Like, I look forward to being able to open up to someone that's not going to tell anyone my business. And that, to me, it's almost like that bucket that's filling up constantly, constantly, constantly. And that dude, when I pick up that phone, I just turn the spigot open and it just drains. And that has been the biggest moment for me.
For someone, that's great, by the way. Thank you for sharing that. That's superb. For someone that's, how can I put it, done well on social media, in on perception is has got a bunch of followers and people listen to what you say and whatnot. How do you see social media? How do you see Instagram? What is it? What is it for you? Is it a place where you can just share ideas and it just happens that people have gravitated towards you, your personality, your way of doing things? Or has it been strategic that you want to build a personal brand and you go about it in certain ways to be able to do that?
To me, social media is just fun, man. I originally started using Twitter because the football team that I worked with, those kids left to go to college, and instead of sending them all text messages of movements, I would post them on Twitter and then they would see them. Twitter was never supposed to be this thing that got big. Instagram, so my guilt, my small guilt to this, Rob, is I actually do have a marketing degree as well. So I do understand. I have to say it. I have to throw it in there if someone calls me out. I do understand a little bit of consumer behavior because of this. So, but with that, like, that wasn't my intentions. It was just to share, just to network, and it's become this thing. And when people ask me all the time, "Well, how do I grow social media? How do I grow my brand?" I'm like, by not saying that. That's it. That that's
Yeah.
that's how you grow your brand and your social media, by not saying, "How do I grow my social media or brand?" Just bring value, and maybe the right people will value what you say, value what you do, value what you share. Maybe you can connect with some people and it brings you opportunities, but it's like you want the finish line, but the finish line no one wants. Like, anyone that's at the finish line is like, "This isn't fun." Like, all my friends make fun of me because social media, like, "Oh, Mr. Big Influencer." I got a shirt that says influencer, and my friends think it's hilarious, and I absolutely hate it. I come home and there's balloons in my house saying I have so many followers now because my wife thinks it's hilarious to make fun of me that I'm just some Instagram thought like half the other people on social media. And it's just like, it's given me opportunities, so I'm thankful. I mean, if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Of
If it
course,
wasn't if it
100%.
wasn't for social media, David Joyce wouldn't know who my name is. I would have never had the opportunity to write in that book. So to me, it is very strategic in that standpoint of like, hey, if I'm trying to influence thought with mobility, which I am because I'm trying to change the narrative, then I am going to post towards that direction. But like, I'm not trying to be famous or grow a brand. No.
Love that. I said I'd keep you to the hour, and like I say, but given what we've spoken about, I want to make sure I honour that. So thank you very much for giving me your time, Vernon. But most importantly, where can people follow you and what you're doing? And the book is on Amazon, and people can buy that everywhere. So people want to get into the chapter that you wrote, people can grab that.
Yep.
But where's the best place for people to find you and learn more about you?
On social media, I mean, it's pretty easy to find. There are not many Vernon Griffiths out there, I guess. So, I mean, you just type my name in there, send me a DM, tag me in something. You can send me an email. That's in the link. I think my website's up there in my link tree in my bio. I do have something new going on now that I just started for law enforcement, fire and rescue, and military. trying to build this contextual thought of strength and conditioning as well as meet them where they are, because I did walk that path, and that's the initiative, and that's something that we'll be launching very soon. So anyone that's working in those fields, feel free to check that out. We have a lot of good stuff coming.
Very exciting. Like I say, thank you very much for giving up an hour of your time, and pleasure to speak to you. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks.
Speak soon.
Thanks for having me,
Cheers,
Rob.
Vernon.